All right, 2016 comes to a close. Another brilliant year of Keiser reports. What's on tap, Stacy?
Max, this is the end of 2016. We're heading into the sunset of 2016, going into 2017. Many Americans, many people around the world are happy to see 2016 go. Not only did a lot of people die this year, the likes of David Bowie, for example, but well, this was a year that every single forecast was wrong. For example, Remain was supposed to win. The Brits were not supposed to vote for Brexit. And it was also the year that, who was it? Oh, yes, Trump won.
Right, you know, this is the culmination of what I call the Bermuda triangulation of the news cycle, the political cycle. We're flying over uncharted territory, and all the ships of forecasting have sunk, and all the planes trying to predict where we're going have crashed. It's like, you know, that TV show that was on a while ago, Lost. Remember? The plane crashed, and then everyone was in this weird narrative, not knowing what parallel dimension they were in, and at the end it turned out that that was just going nowhere. But hopefully 2017 will resolve itself in some way.
And if you're watching this, of course, the coup failed, or, you know, well, there was a coup, right? Half of Americans think there was a coup either way, whether or not the Electoral College overthrew Trump or whether Trump was installed by Putin, as the other half of Americans think. So that was a unique thing about 2016, but heading into 2017, I think there will be the consequences of that, because that sort of thing of Obama and Hillary and the CIA coming out and saying that a head of a state of another nation interfered with the election and installed our president, that sort of thing just doesn't disappear. So this is what we have to look forward to. I don't know what that's going to be in 2017. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, it's sad that Barack Obama, who studied constitutional law in law school, ends up trying to stage a coup by throwing the Electoral College, suggesting foreign interference based on not one shred, one iota of evidence. And his legacy now is gone down in flames.
Well, let's look at some of the possible headlines from 2017 that might happen as a result of this. The difference in Putin, the difference with are these like
Putin
pearls? They all, oh, there's just shells. Okay, so the difference with Trump and his allegiances or lack of allegiances, and here's the first headline: Trump proposes lifetime ban on defense firms hiring DoD contracting officials. That's Department of Defense. And according to Reuters news service, Trump told a rally in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, that, quote, "I think anybody that gives out these big contracts should never, ever, during their lifetime, be allowed to work for a defense company, for a company that makes that product." He added that he would check it out before making any final decisions. But in particular, that was when he went on to say that the F-35 program was costing too much. And remember, Lockheed Martin shares fell and...
Right, so he's got to raise some money, pay off some debt, so why not go after these white elephants at the Pentagon and go after the revolving door that is the military going into the defense contractors. Also, these guys end up on CNN as experts, independent experts, so-called, when they're pitching war. We saw that in the lead-up to the Iraq War, defense contractors on CNN pitching for more war. I'd like to see him, talk about fake news, ban defense contractors actively employed by defense contractor generals on the news promoting war. That would be great.
Okay. Well, remember also on their Christmas special, we covered this headline, but I want to point out something that we overlooked I chose not to cover it in that bit to save it for the New Year's Eve special. And the headline was, Trump rally could mark biggest post-election stock market rise since Hoover. What it went through in that article was what to expect in 2017 from, let's get closer together, from 2017 from a Trump administration. So I want to look at some of these. We've already discussed Obamacare and whether or not he'll get rid of that, whether or not it is even possible. But among Trump's many pledges, the one that is easiest to implement by Yardeni's reckoning, this is a financial services group, is the proposal to lower taxes on repatriated earnings to 10% from 35%, which could trigger an inflow of up to $2.4 trillion to the U.S. So they're saying that if that $2.4 trillion comes back into the U.S., a lot of it could go into the stock market.
Oh, absolutely. That's definitely in the works to repatriate the trillions of dollars held outside of the U.S. Apple Computer obviously has got a lot. You know, they've got a big high-tech conferences going on in Washington with Trump to suggest all this and put this down on paper and get this signed off on. But yeah, that could go into stock markets. So too, Social Security funds could be put into the stock market. But I think the stock market's already discounted a huge amount of this money flowing into the stock market. And you know, stock markets are a discounting mechanism that look ahead to the future. So maybe by the time this is announced, it'll be, you know, it'll be priced in, as they say, and then you'll see, you know, a reaction to the other side.
Okay, well, on top of that, then there's that corporate taxes. This is something that he could easily get through, especially because Republicans control the Congress. And that is a broad corporate tax cut of up to 15% from roughly 27.5% in 2015. One of the most eagerly awaited of Trump-initiated changes could stoke the S&P 500 to dizzying heights. A 5 percentage point reduction in the tax rate would add $9.10 to S&P 500's 2017 consensus earnings estimate of 132, while a 10 percentage point cut will boost earnings by $18, according to the strategists at Denny.
Right. Well, people say that the stock market is trading at a very high price to earnings multiple, but obviously if the earnings are going to expand dramatically, then it's fairly priced. And if it gets back to the same multiple that it is today, then the Dow Jones could go to 30,000.
So, by the way, I love the fact that we're on a beach, because this is how we're ending the year, on a beach, and we begin the year on a beach. This is a kind of the way the Chinese think, I know.
Oh, yeah. Well, they say, you know, life's a beach and then you die.
Let's talk about Europe, because Europe kind of got overlooked in the end of 2016 because, of course, the U.S. and all of the stuff that happened in the U.S. became the big story. But what do you think is going to happen in 2017 with Europe? Because we have elections coming up in France, we have elections coming up in Italy, we have banking crises in Italy, we have the IMF and the Troika basically, once again, punishing Greece. So is this going to be the year finally that, you know, everything falls apart for Greece?
Yeah, well, as you point out, Greece is already under the fire again from the IMF. They want to extract more from them. The entire EU looks problematic. I mean, Italy looks ready to go down. France looks horrible. So you've got a huge crisis developing there. So the euro is trading quite horribly as well. And Europe looks like a complete freaking disaster.
Well, so we may have to go back to Europe if that falls apart, because, of course, where things fall apart, the Keiser report goes. So, you know, if Trump is allowed to take office on January 20th, like, foreign policy obviously drives a lot of the markets. We see, you know, defense shares go up, for example, under George W. Bush, because we were invading a lot of people. If Trump takes over and he does get people like John Bolton and Rex Tillerson in, are we going to see a pivot to Iran? And are we going to see a pivot to Asia? You know, Obama and Hillary Clinton had talked about the Asia pivot, but are we going to see a real Asia pivot, more of a confrontation and a renegotiation of deals with China by the Trump administration?
I'll make this prediction. I don't think it's going to be a pivot to Iran the way some people are talking about, because remember, Iran is very close with Russia. And so I think that since they are going to be cozying with Russia for both energy security and anti-terrorism play, I think the big surprise in 2017 is going to be a focus on Saudi Arabia in a huge way, to crack down on their human rights abuses and their market manipulation behavior. I think they're going to be the big loser in 2017.
Well, let's look at the China relationship, because in the lead up to the end of 2016 and the beginning of 2017, we saw Donald Trump, president-elect, tweeting over and over in a way that antagonized China. And then he took a phone call from the head of Taiwan for the first time that a U.S. president or president-elect had spoken to the head of Taiwan. And he actually tweeted about he's against the one China policy. So this has been U.S. policy for since 1979 to refer to one China. So here's a headline regarding that, and we could speculate about how this might impact 2017. The headline reads, Trump tweets about China, U.S. businesses freak out. So there's $627 billion in trade between the two countries, but $337 billion is a trade deficit with China that the U.S. has.
Yeah. Well, I think Trump's going to bring to foreign policy a certain masculinity. And what I mean by that is anyone who's played, organized sports or team sports know that guys on sports teams can whack each other in the face and still be friends. I mean, it's no big deal. This is a rough and tumble business. The idea of being overly diplomatic about things hasn't gotten anyone anywhere. We just need to do deals, see where the chips fall, and then do deals again. I mean, let's get real about all this stuff and try to be, the super French way to be diplomatique and nuanced, that time is finished. And we have too much to do, not much time to do it, and Trump's a good guy to get these deals done.
Well, again, I'm talking about the actual amount of trade deals, actual trade, not even deals, that happens between the U.S. and China. And I'm going to go over some of the data about U.S. multinational giants, corporations, and how much of their trade, their income, and their sales actually comes from China, their revenue. So China is important to U.S. companies. Qualcomm gets 57% of its revenues in China, Micron 43%, Apple 23%, Jabil 21%, Boeing 13%, Wynn Resorts 60%, according to Bloomberg, and GM sold 2.7 million vehicles in China last year, 38% of GM's global sales, up by 9% year over year.
Yeah, sure. And China sells a lot of stuff in the United States. It's a quid pro quo. There's a lot of trade that goes back and forth. And it's time to stay tuned for the second half, and we'll be talking about a lot more, especially with our friend Gerald Celente. Hi. Hey, it wouldn't be New Year's Eve without a trip to Kingston, New York, and speak with Gerald Celente of thetrendsjournal.com, where you can find his monthly newsletter forecasting the most important political and economic trends. Gerald, welcome.
Felice Anno Nuovo. Happy New Year.
All right, Gerald Celente, looking forward to 2017. Let's talk about economic disorder. It's one of the trends you're forecasting in the latest Trends Journal. Tell us more.
Well, the way it goes is like this. Here in the USA, we think it's going to be a pretty solid economy compared to what it used to be. And when you look at who Trump is picking, and I know people are emotionally involved in liking or disliking him, but as political atheists, we look at it for what it is, not the way we want it to be. He has a business cabinet, and he's going to run this like a corporation rather than a politician running it like a political party. So when you look at some of his picks, it's a business cabinet. It's a corporate cabinet. And he's going to dismantle a lot of the government. So there won't be a lot of loss of money going in a different direction. However, when you look globally, take a look at what's going on with interest rates already and how much they've gone up and how much stronger the dollar's gone up and how the Federal Reserve says they're going to raise interest rates possibly 3 more times in the coming year, tomorrow, forward. So that's going to hurt a lot of the emerging market nations, particularly the ones that have borrowed so much money in dollars, and they have to pay it back as their currencies get weaker. So you're going to start seeing a lot of weakness around the world in a lot of different economies. And so that's why we call it this economic disorder. It may be better for the United States, but it's not going to be better for a lot of countries, China being one of them, for example. Look what's going on with the yuan. What is it down to now? 8-year lows against the dollar? And look at they're trying to stop the capital outflows. Look how people are buying bitcoins and gold in China because they know that their currency is going lower. So those are the kind of problems that we see on the economic front. All right, so Gerald, let's talk about Donald Trump for a second, because he's not a capitalist, really. He's not a socialist, really. He's more of a transactionalist. In other words, it's all about the transaction. And he wants to do deals, and he's got Rex Tillerson over there at the Secretary of State, who's done deals in the oil patch and done deals with Russia. But let me give you my theory. Tell me what you think about my theory.
I think Trump has said one of his recurring themes is that he's trying to fight terrorism. And I think he figured out early on that the best partner he could possibly have in the world to fight terrorism is Russia. And he has reached out to Russia throughout his entire campaign. We all know that the mother lode, the source of global terrorism is Wahhabism that comes out of Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, of course, is the preeminent oil power, has been for decades. Wouldn't it be a great opportunity for the United States and Russia to fight terrorism by squeezing Saudi Arabia on things like human rights and other issues? I mean, Saudi Arabia was Hillary Clinton backer, the main backer, and they have the worst record in terms of human rights probably in the world. She was supported by a head-chopping dictator. But going forward, is that a way that his businessman experience can play out on the geopolitical front to fight something like terrorism? Your thoughts, Gerald?
Yes, in fighting terrorism, let's look at the cause of it. When did all this happen? How about the first Iraq War? And if you didn't like that, how about the ongoing one? Take a look at Afghanistan, the longest war in American history. So if you lived in a city or a country or a state and a foreign country came in and occupied you and killed everybody that you love, oh, I forgot about Libya. How could I forget that one? Gaddafi has to go. And so that's what's created the terrorism. So now when you also listen to Trump, one of the things that he keeps saying is no more of this toppling other governments. We have no business doing it. So his relationship with Putin, as well as not becoming engaged in other foreign entanglements, I believe is also a way of ending this war on terror that's never going to end if you keep bombing and killing people all over the world.
Gerald, what about this idea of fake news? We've got a situation here where the Hillary Democrat supporters have become rabid conspiracy theorists, much more extreme than any so-called conspiracy theorists leading up to the election. It's quite ironic, I think, that someone like Alex Jones, that's been called a conspiracy theorist, has actually emerged as a top journalist in America, whereas the likes of MSNBC, CBS, CNN are coming off like the National Enquirer, but much worse. How did that happen, Gerald?
Oh, it's very simple. They lost. They lost the election. When you go and look at the facts, most of the newspapers, most of the media supported Hillary Clinton. They lost. So what they're trying to do is make their loss and blame it on somebody else. And by the way, it wasn't only Trump that beat Clinton in the media, he also beat Silicon Valley. All the Zuckerbergs and the Schmitz with Google and with WikiLeaks showing how much Google was involved with the best of the best with the Clinton campaign. They lost. Hollywood, they lost. The Zuckerbergs, the Spielbergs, the Katzenbergs, the Spielbergs, the Clooneys, the De Niros, they lost. The rappers, they lost. They all lost. The entertainment industry, the De Niros and the Clooneys, they lost. So with the losers, when they lose, and they try to blame other people for their losses. And that's what this fake news. I will give you an example of prostitute fake news from the paper of record, the New York Times, which I call the toilet paper of record. They ran a story in mid-December about what's going on in Italy with the Five-Star Movement. And in that story, the reporter's name is Jason Horowitz. And I believe he should spell Horowitz with a W, because he was the perfect Horowitz prostitute. He mentioned 3 times in that story that the Five-Star Movement and the organization behind them were, quote, putting out fake news. This little clown of a nobody calls himself a journalist and did not give one example of Cinque Stelle, the Five-Star Movement, putting out fake news. Not one example, and a huge story. So that's why they're doing it, because they're losers. You look at the decline in readership in the newspapers in America. They're firing everybody. It's one of our top trends for 2017. Fourth estate, rest in peace. They're pieces of They don't put out anything. Hey, you want to talk about fake news? Of course, everybody knows it. Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction and ties to Al Qaeda. They'll make up anything they want. Look what they did with the Bosnian Yugoslav war. Look what they did with the first Gulf War. You remember the babies in the incubator that the Saudis were bayoneting? Yeah, and they made that one up too. They're prostitutes. The New York Times sold us the war with Hussein. Well, you know, he was bringing in them yellow cakes and aluminum tubes. Oh, it was a fake story. They're losers. They're crybabies, and that's why they're coming out with a fake news story.
All right, let's turn to the markets for a second. We've had a bull run on the Trump election in such a magnitude. Last time we saw was Herbert Hoover. This type of percentage gain, of course, that led to the crash and depression. Any parallels there?
You know, we don't think so, because what he's also doing, he's going to build up corporations in a better way in terms of the tax breaks. And again, I'm not judging good or bad, right or wrong, but he's going to do more for them, deregulation. So it's going to be a corporate kind of culture. So yes, the market is going up erratically since Trump has gone in. Is it going to have a pullback? Of course it is.
All right, let me jump in. I want to get to a couple of questions here. So, Gerald, you in Trends Journal, you also forecast Rust Belt 2.0. Elaborate.
Again, I tell you, the Silicon Valley also lost this election. It's going to become a Rust Belt. The old Rust Belt states and cities, went down because of the natural resources weren't needed or the transportation. But this is different. The mind has no location. The mind is worldwide. And you're seeing developments in South Korea and China, all over the world, in high tech. You don't need to be in a location. And what Silicon Valley proved in this last election is that their mind is very narrow.
All right, let me move on.
Start looking
Gerald,
for
another forecast you make for 2017 is sell, buy China. What does that mean?
Well, it means that China's buying up everywhere and they're selling. So sell to them and buy to them. Hollywood's moving over there, and they're taking Hollywood and moving it there as well. You look at the states over here, now people are using their apps and investing in small investments over here in the states from China. Go back to China again, look what's going on with their currency. A lot of people want to get the currency out of there. They're going to be moving it around the world. It's a country of 1.35 billion people. Do business there and get them over wherever you are to do business with them. The business of the world is business.
All right, now, Gerald, another trend you see is no more cash. Is this going to happen in a manner which we saw in India recently, or will it be less tumultuous, Gerald?
No, it's going. Look what they're going to try to do it in Venezuela. Again, going back to what I was saying in the beginning, with the interest rates getting higher and all these problems that you're going to start seeing in emerging countries trying to pay back debt, this cashless society is going to continue. But the other thing, Max, is we look at it and then say, okay, what are the business opportunities? What are the companies that are going to grow in it? Because there's no end in sight to it. They want to know every penny that you're spending, the government, so they can get a piece of the action.
All right, so what is, talking about China a little bit more here, what will be this China pivot? Like, Trump's really into a genuine Asia pivot. Do you predict a major change in U.S.-China relationship? What might that look like, Gerald?
I think there's going to be definite renegotiation of the deals that are going on. Tariffs are going to go up. But, I mean, China's not going to bulk. What are they going to do? They have to sell their product, so they'll make a deal. And, again, you look at the people that he put in on this, like a guy like Wilbur Ross. These are cutthroat operators in business. So I think there's going to be some kind of a negotiation.
Yeah, I would agree with you. These are the cutthroat rogues gallery of the worst, or not the worst, but the most malicious. But if they're managed properly under a head of state, they could be, I'd rather have them in the tent facing out than outside the tent facing in, if you know what I mean. Would you agree with that?
I agree 100%. Again, if they do it in the national interest and not their personal interest, it's going to benefit. Because actually, the deals do stink. The NAFTA, 22 years, America running negative deficits. with Mexico, a complete reversal. So yeah, these guys, as you know, they're tough business guys. And again, Trump is not going to tell them what to do. Look at the government being run under him as kind of like these people aren't cabinet members. They're senior vice presidents. And they have a lot of dough of their own. They don't have to buckle under political pressure. So if they work together, I think it's going to be good for the country. And this is a complete reversal the way I was thinking before about where the economy was going.
All right, Gerald Celente, thanks for this New Year's Eve special report, Trends Journal.
Happy New Year, Max and Stacy. Thanks for having me on, and all the best for a great 2017.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this edition of the Keiser Report with me, Max Keiser, and Stacey Herbert. I'd like to thank our guest, Gerald Celente of the Trends Journal. If you want to reach us on Twitter, it's Keiser Report. Until next time, bye, y'all.